Hi, my name is Nate Nestler, and welcome to an exciting edition of PHP development. This is for Hyperactive Studios, and let's get going with doing some MySQL database programming. Now, I just finished making a video on MySQL, and you can go watch that, and it's this pretty cool video to this, basically. I'm going to do more with the MySQL and do some more videos in it. I've already decided on that, and so we'll flesh it out some more, but I just wanted to have enough information to get this one going here. And so cover enough material to do that. And as far as PHP goes, we'll cover some more stuff later on here. How to make this object oriented, how to add errors, catching, trapping, try, catch statements, all that kind of stuff. So we'll get more and more involved, how to do sessions, etc. But for right now, we're going to go over how to start getting into the database stuff, and then we'll start working databases into some of these other type of programming techniques and things of this nature. So this is more boilerplate right now. This is kind of like minimal information you have to have in order to get something going and working. So as far as the database goes, and then we'll expand on it and make it more complicated, more sophisticated as we go along here. All right. Now these variables are not required to be named like this. I just did this purely for the fact of, let's space these out a little bit, purely for the fact that it makes it easier to read. And technically I could do something like that if I really want to get fancy and start lining up things properly. But inside your PHP tags, this is all you need. You have a DB host. This would be location of your server. In this case, we're saying localhost to point back to ourselves. But if this is a remote server somewhere else on the internet, you would need to put in that name for its internet name or its IP address here. One of the two has to go in there. And then this comes up to being the actual database. And this is called testDB here, but we named ours users, so we will need to change that to users for that. My username for accessing this database was Nate, but whatever you put for your name is the one you need to put here when you created that user with the on the MySQL series there. So whatever user you're using for accessing this database, that's the one you need to use. And then the password, we just made it password for demonstration purposes. In the real world, you would never, ever, ever make your password password. But in the case of just demonstration, I made it password for instructional purposes and for no other reason. Alright? So I just named my variables stuff that kind of makes sense, like db_host, db_database, db_username, db_password. So this gets into the database. So in DB short for database. So database host, database. Then we're going to access the database username, the database password, etc. So this makes it really nice when you're logging in that you just have this information stored. And then you can call this file by including it in yet a different file here. So I did this in db_connection.php, and this is db_login.php. And you can name your stuff whatever you like, but I just kind of did mine DB for everything. So that way everyone would know that this is a database type class or whatever. Well, not class, but variables. Later on, be classes. We can turn these into classes later on. But for now, this gives you an idea of how this works. Okay, so we just include this other file. This would be db_login.php, close quotes, close parentheses, semicolon. And that's going to include the file we just made right here. And so this is nice. This makes it really easy if you need to update or edit this information for your database for making a whole new site. So this means that you can reuse this code. So once you write this code up once, you don't have to rewrite it again and again and again. You just reuse it. And that makes a lot of logical sense. You don't want to reinvent the wheel over and over again. Now I created another variable called connection. Now I said that this is equal to MySQL_connect. Now note, none of this is going to work unless you have the PHP module for MySQL installed. So you have to have MySQL installed, you have to have PHP, you have to have the PHP MySQL module installed. Now we already did that back in the second video, I believe it was, of the Apache installation setup and everything, and on the initial one actually too, but in particularly that one. And so realize that if you don't have that installed, this is never going to work. So you must have that PHP module installed. You can use the PHP info open close parentheses function to test that to find out or not, but without that, forget it, it ain't happening. So $DB underscore host here is going to give you that database host that we're going to pass in, and then we're going to pass in the username for the database, and then its password right there like that. So let's just connect to the database. If the connection fails, we can detect it. So if not connection is true, which makes it so the connection comes back as being false, which means it failed. Then not false is what? True. So it's true that it did not connect, basically. In which case, then we can say die couldn't connect to database colon, and then we do a break statement here. Dot MySQL error open close parentheses semicolon. So this means we automatically just die and we don't keep attempting to connect or do anything further. It's going to kick out this error message, and then we display the MySQL error that was contained in there to the screen. This is important for database testing purposes. Maybe on an actual launch website you wouldn't necessarily want to do this, but when you're developing a site, you do want to give yourself feedback as much as you can, especially with PHP, because there's no testing tools. So it's kind of important to build in as much testing as you can into your own classes and functions and everything as far as that goes. And then we have an else here. So otherwise, it did connect. So if it does connect, then guess what? We can say $DB select right here, and we're going to select a particular database. And that's the database that we put in the previous file, which is in the db underscore login.php. So MySQL select db here function, and we're going to select the database that we've already chosen. In this case, users. And then if we're able to select that database, meaning that we have privileges to do so, meaning that it exists, and that everything's there. If everything works and the server didn't die or anything of that nature, then we're able to actually select that database. So then it comes back, and if we weren't able to connect, then it's false. But if we say it's not false, then it's true, right? So saying that if it was not able to select, if we were not able to select, then, which is double negative, then it's true that we had an error, basically. Couldn't select the database. Break, and we're going to say what the MySQL error was for that again. So there you go. And then this lets you have some error feedback on your database connections. So that's nice, and that's how you can set that up. But if all that goes through, then you have your select and your connection has happened, and you are able to get the database selected and you are able to connect. After that, then you can start issuing other commands. So for instance, I could then include this dbconnection.php, and it will by default include the login, so you get this whole thing happening here. And when I include this right here, it'll automatically make a connection to the database, and we'll need that in order to make any of these database commands go through. So that's why we have this here, where we include it. db underscore connection.php. Okay, so say we want our user name here. We want to have it have an email associated with our users table. Now technically it would also have a password that goes along with this, but I didn't when I created the database, and we could do that. You could actually create entire database tables to this. You can do any command inside of MySQL. You can do it through PHP. Here, you can issue it to it. So I'm going to show you how here. There's more ways to do it. You could just handwrite the whole thing. I don't like doing that. The reason why is it's more prone to errors, and you really don't want to have errors. It's actually a lot easier to make an error on this than you'd think it would be. So part of the reason why I have it pre-typed up from stuff I've done before in the past, I just kind of I don't know, whittled this down to just a nice basic example, and didn't reinvent the wheel on this. I just tweaked it to what we needed here for the video, but I didn't go back and well, I did actually go back and reinvent some of this because I had to in order to make it match the scenario, but I'm just using the same setup I normally use here. So $name equals here in quotes student close quotes semicolon, and so it's going to be equal to the name. And then the email here is localhost at student at localhost here. And if I say update here, I could call it something other than update. Really, probably be a better idea if I did. Maybe I say something like insert, maybe would be better. It's whatever. Alright, so since this is an update command, you'll find out once you write one of these, you can just copy and paste it for the most part and make a few variations, and bada bing, you have it. So very cool. Not that hard to do, actually. So this is kind of like a prequel to setting up to actually working with forms. First, you have to see how to actually insert something into a database before you worry about sending information from a form and then applying that to the database. This is very close to what you do, actually, as far as getting the data into a database from the form. The information be sent to this file from a database post form or something of that nature, or a get or something of that nature. And then the data would then be inserted into the database from here. And this is the technique for how you would go about it. So you want to break it up into little variables like this, and then just compose a whole query statement like so. The reason you want to do this is because it's so much easier to keep track of it. If I say insert equals single quotes here space insert into space single quotes semicolon. Now I can reuse this over and over again anytime I want to do another type insert programming statement, and I don't have to reinvent this code here. I don't have to. I can just make slight changes to it, and my query is going to work. This means I have fewer chances for errors in the future. Not to mention, if we go to turn this into a class type setup, we could pass actual variables into this, and thus we could actually set values to it with a setter and getter and things of that nature, and thus set different values for it from an object-oriented standpoint, and abstract out the database basically commands to MySQL as a framework, basically an abstract framework, even with the ability to switch databases on the fly if need be. So this is really quite powerful if you start using these variables like this and start breaking up your SQL statements like this, because it really does save you a lot of headaches. So now tables refers to the tables that can be involved with it. So that makes life a lot easier. If I say $tables, this is always going to be the table. And the $from, now in this case it's values, but I could use a from if I wanted to, and I set values here, and I could have one called values. It probably makes more sense if I did. So maybe I say values instead. But you get the idea. And then values here, and then the first one's going to be null. It's probably always going to be the case, basically, because you're always going to have the first one be null, because that's going to be your auto incrementer, because it's your primary key. So the first one's going to be null. That's going to be the first value passed in. And then I can do single quotes here, semicolon, and then we're going to set our different values for this. So this is where it comes in. We need to put single quotes around a double quote, and then we need to concatenate that with $name, because remember, this has to have actual quotes in it when it gets composed into a query going to the database. Now I'm echoing this out so you can see the result of it. So that way you can see the query that you are composing, you're making. This is very important when you're first writing one of these, because you'll need to see the results back. And I like to have this on hand, comment it out or something like that, and then be able to uncomment it anytime I need to just see an error on this. Because by putting this into a variable, it's really easy to echo this out and then find out what I'm getting back here as an SQL command, and did I compose it correctly? So it's a great way of self-checking. Did I compose this SQL statement correctly? But basically, this is going to be having the realize the name was student. And you're like, well, student already has double quotes. Yeah, it does here, which specifies it as a string to PHP, but it's not going to have quotes around it when it gets outputted. So basically, when it gets sent over to SQL, it's not going to have the quotes around it. It's just going to say student with no quotes around it. So that's not going to be compatible with SQL, with MySQL's SQL to be accurate. and so you're going to have to actually create quotes that get concatenated with the actual name here. So that's why I have the single quotes here with a double quote in between, and I'm dotting that with for concatenation of $ name here, dot, single quotes, double quotes, comma, double quotes again, single quote, dot, $email, dot, single quote, double quote, close parentheses, space, single quote, semicolon. You might be going, what about the semicolon inside here? Actually, you don't use it when you're going through PHP. You normally, inside the command line, wherever when you're doing MySQL, yes, you use semicolons. But in the case of when you're issuing it through PHP, you don't use the semicolons. So that's the only gotcha there, but the rest of this stays the same. And then so when we run this, we get $query equals insert dot $insert dot tables dot $values dot set values semicolon. And this is going to concatenate all this together into one SQL query. And then I'm going to display this query to myself so that I can do a self-check to make sure I'm doing it right. I didn't make any little typos in here. This is where you're most likely going to make typos. It's between values and this one right here. Those are two main locations where you're going to make typos. Usually I don't make much typos up in this area here, but down in here, when you start actually composing and passing those values with all those quotes and commas and blah blah blah, and the dots, you're more likely to make a typo. So this is typo territory right here, if you will. So kind of important to double check yourself. All right. After we got our query variable composed, we have our query that we're going to be sending to MySQL. So in order to send that query, we say MySQL underscore query, and then we put in our query. So that's why we won't compose it as a variable. Otherwise, this becomes a really long statement, and it's just nasty to deal with. So close parentheses, semicolon, and this is all going to equal to $result. It's the result of our SQL query. So these are the results we get back from the database. If it fails to work, we put in an if here, it's a not result here, and we say die, could not query the database, and the MySQL error that we got from it. All right. Remember, we really don't have anything to do with insert other than an error, so there you go. And that's the result we're going to get. So let's try running this now. So if I go into restore this, I guess, right here. You know what? No, I'm going to close this out. I'm going to put this on a different page because I really don't want it on the same screen. I want to move between screens. I just prefer that. Okay, so Nate, in this case, it'll be a db underscore insert dot php. I believe it is. Bam. And so there's the SQL query that we sent. So insert into test table values, open parentheses, null, comma, double quote student, close double quotes, comma, double quote student at localhost, close quotes, close parentheses. So there we are. And if we test our database, we'll be able to find it in here. So let's have a look at that. Let's run a select statement on this. Star from, oh, you know what? We said test table. That's going to fail. Didn't we? Wait, did we create one called test table? Maybe we did. I can't remember. Alright, first off, let's just show database tables. Show tables. We did create one called test table. Yep, so I stand corrected. Select star from test table. Semicolon. Alright, so now we have two of them that are students, and this is the one that came from PHP right here. Number 4. That's the one we created right there. So very cool. It worked great, and our SQL statement got displayed like we told it to from PHP with the echo, and it shows us that yes, this is a proper query. I can even take this query, so this is a great way of testing this. This is the way I like to do this for this reason. I can just Control-C to copy that, come back over to my terminal, hit Control-Shift-V, paste it, add a semicolon to the end, and enter. Should work. If it does, Bam, there we go. We got 4, 5, etc. and 2 now all have the same information. Worked flawlessly. So bam, that file is done. It works. It's great. We don't have to worry about it. Our insert code is flawless. So nothing to worry about, and we now have a well-structured insert. And any other inserts I want to make for the database, I can just make a copy of this file and modify it and do another insert for that particular situation. So no matter what the situation is, you have it covered this way. Very, very cool. Believe it or not, unfortunately our queries are more advanced, and so I'm going to push them off to towards the end of this video after we've had some more practice. Put it that way. So okay. So here we're going to do a DB connection again, and we have student at localhost.localdomain, and then we're going to say student. So we're going to be changing the email address from what it was on student at localhost to student at localhost.localdomain. This is also valid. It's just a longer variation of the same thing. So you notice we just copy and paste the exact same file and make some changes. So change insert to update. So the tables is there, good. From could be set to set if we like. Since it's not a from, that came from the query. I know where that came from. Alright, so we're saying our update. The update command, we're going to update a particular database. In this case, table, a particular table. And it might be a good idea to, yeah, this is a table variable, so we're setting the table here. We're going to be setting it, and with what values? Well, we're going to set it to where email is equal to double quotes dot single quotes dot concatenate with $email dot concatenate single quotes double quotes single quotes of space here's semicolon. So there we go. And we're going to set the email to the email where command, where the name is equivalent to the name that we have up here, which is going to be student in quotes. So this is going to put student in double set of quotes here because we're saying single quote name equals double quote single quote concatenate $ name dot single quote double quote space single quote semicolon. So that's going to make it put double quotes around student. So it's going to end up saying name equals and double quote student in between the double quotes. That's what it'll do. And then this whole thing will compose all those parts together. Will get concatenated because we put the dots in between them, and it'll go into one single query variable. And we're going to echo out that query variable so we can see that this actually worked. And so this is going to affect any record that had the name student in it. It's going to change the email address accordingly. So MySQL underscore query here, and we're going to execute our query and return the result. And again, update's another thing where there's really nothing that comes back that we need to process. It just needs to see that if it worked or not. So we're saying if not result, basically did it fail? If it did fail, if it's true that it failed, then could not query the database here, and then display the MySQL error with the by concatenating it with MySQL error function. So a special function for displaying those MySQL errors. All right, semicolon end that, and that's the end of that file. Awesome, and that's how you do an update inside of MySQL. Cool. Let's run it. This will be db underscore update.php. Bam, and there's our result. So again, we outputted our query that went to the database, and let's verify it. You always want to verify it, otherwise you don't know. Check it out. It went from being student at localhost to student at localhost.domain for every single one with the name student in it. So Bob did not get changed, but all the others did. So if I were to run the same command that we had from before, copy and paste, add semicolon, define replace. So there we are, and that runs the update. Of course, we've already updated it, so it's not going to make any changes. But the point here is that this did work. Cool. And so we can mark off our updating page as working. Great. This is a really awesome way of double checking yourself. This way I can also get error feedback from MySQL if the query didn't get set up correctly. So now I know, hey, I didn't compose my query correctly over here in PHP. I need to fix it. So Really nice way of handling this, and I like doing this when I'm doing early development with databases. So we updated, we inserted, we did connections. You can also delete with this. And you can compose a delete statement, which is very useful with this. Tell you what, I'll show you how to do that one real quick. Alright, so let's just take an insert and just repurpose it for a delete. Alright, so we save this now. I thought I had a delete one already in here, but I guess I didn't copy it over, because I'm pretty sure I did at one point in time. Note you could also do drop and create tables and things like that, including databases, creating new users as part of the database system. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do on this thing. So, don't feel like you're walled in to where you can only do a certain thing. Anyways, let's change this insert here variable to delete, because it makes more sense since we're dealing with a delete. Okay, and so we're not going to insert into, we're going to delete. I'll make it all caps. And we're not going to do values, but we will do and. Alright, let's see if I can't show you the anatomy of a delete. Let me make this easier. I think this back over here in scripts where I have this thing here, and I think I just did it as example SQL. Yeah, so here I have a delete from. I don't have the one where it says where. Alright, well, I guess I'll just have to wing it for showing you how to do it then. I was hoping to give you a good example of the delete statement without having to run the delete, because once you run it, it deletes it, so it's kind of a problem. But, alright. So delete from, inside the from up here, right? This will be test tables. And this guy should be a where statement right here. Alright. Let's just say where. And we can specify a particular thing in here. Let's say name equals double quotes like that. Or maybe we do that since we already have it down here, and then we have our values here. Name equals that. Now I'm not really interested in my email thing because I already have it taken care of here when I do the name. So we're going to delete where name is name, and we don't care about email. Email here is not going to matter because we're not doing an insert anymore. So the only thing we really need is a name there. And this should give us, alright, so we have a where, we have set values, okay. Alright. Okay. And this should delete all the students from all the ones that say student for the username from the database. Alright, see if I did it right. This is again me going off script again. But, oh well, I do this all the time. Alright, delete. Alright, and I've made a mistake too. If you have an error in your syntax, check. Make sure that you did it right, basically. Yep, it absolutely did not go through. Alright. Test table, where name, equal to. I added a parenthesis. No parentheses. Don't want to run that command because it'll probably work. Alright. I ended it with a parenthesis that shouldn't have been there. Daggone it. Alright. Save right there. Run Firefox again. Bam, it worked. Alright, let's go ahead and run this. Back over here. Alright. Select from test table and they're toast. Yep. So all the ones with student are gone. Affected no rows this time because we already wiped them out. Bob is the only thing left now. So yes, my delete command did work, and that's an example of how you can remove a particular record or a set of records with a delete. Be careful of that though, as you can see, you quickly could wipe out your database. So make sure you get that coded correctly on dummy data before you ever apply it to a real database. Make sure you back up data too before you run any test scenarios. It's just a good idea, I'm just saying. Okay. Just make sure you have everything ironed out exactly how it should be. Well, anyways, there is that delete right there. If I just want to get that record back real quick for adding a student back in, remember we still have our insert and it's still going to add student back in. So if I run insert like this, it reinserted it into the database. So now we're going to have student over here again. And now student's back with the record number 6 here. So very, very cool. So there's an example of delete. The only thing different you could add, I guess, is drop a table or a database, and that would wipe out a table or a database. You could also create tables or databases with this, but you get the idea. You just do the same thing as what we've just been doing. You just do it for creating databases or dropping tables or creating tables themselves, and you can actually use this code to do all that. So very, very powerful. It's pretty cool. It really is. It's pretty cool. Alright. Well, let's look at a query now. So query is a little more advanced. It takes a little bit more work to make it happen. So let's look at how to go about this. Alright, so I'm going to query based on the name, which is going to be student. And I only want that record and nothing else. So I'm going to include my DB connection again as before. And I'm going to say $select equals select here, column here, star, from tables, which is going to be test table here. So we're going to select star from everything. And we didn't say on a particular database table. I'm going to uncomment this in a second, concatenate that, and show you when we get that result back. Alright, and we're going to say where name equals where $where equals $name when we do that one, semicolon. But for most parts, this is going to select everybody from the table, basically. We can compose this into a single query statement, say query, we're going to echo out our query, and it's going to say break page down, because when this works, we're going to display several things. Okay, so $result equals MySQL underscore query here, $query. And this is going to do our result. We can test to see if our result worked, and then we need to start fetching rows from result. So we're going to fetch each row from the result, which should be, this is like a 2D array. So we're going to grab the array within the array. So when we grab this, we're going to grab the first row or the first record of the database result that we got. And so that's why I call it location result. You can call it whatever you want. I don't care. You could call it test table result, for instance. It's whatever. But anyways, this is going to be that record, or you can call it record result, rec results, something like that. I don't know. One of those would be great. Anyways, location result it is for this one. So while that is set up there, close parentheses on all this, we're going to loop through it while there are still records left in our results from our query. So while that is the case, we're going to generate this. So I'm going to say location here. I'm going to say echo out the first value from our record. This will be our first field, which is going to be our ID, or field. And the next one's going to output the name for the next field. It's going to be the name. We're going to echo that out and break it to another line. And then the next one's going to be their email address. And if I wanted to, I could come in here. If I want to have more of a separation than that and kind of like separate a space between each individual record, that we're putting out here, I could come in here and say, in quotes, a P tag, basically, close quote, semicolon, and after we're done with this here, we'd actually space it for the next person. So this is a good way of breaking things into little groups with space visually. It'll look better that way. And so it'll do this where it puts it on its own line for each part there per record, and each set of records will have a space between them if I do it this way. Okay, let's go ahead and query that database and see what we get. Okay, so I'm going to say dbquery.php. And here we get 3 Bob and then Bob at localhost, 6 student at localhost. So there we go. We're getting our records and they're spaced out like so. It's whatever. I mean, we could decide that we want it all on one line. We want to separate it like so. That way we don't want break statements between ours, but we do want a page break like that. For instance, we could separate it by spaces instead. If I come here and do that, bam, there we are, like so. Maybe I don't want that big space in between. Maybe I just want it to be tightly integrated, in which case I'm going to switch that to a BR tag right there. So I do that, come back over here, Firefox again. And it's up to you how you want it to look. Ta-da, there you go. You can put this into a table, generate MySQL, HTML table values, things of that nature. But we'll go back to what I had. As that suited me fine. Now, because I kind of like that better visually, you can see all information there. Alright, so what if I wanted to specify only a particular person name? Use the where tag. No problem. Get that out. And there we go. And then now we will only specify the name student and no one else. So whatever name is equal to over here, it's going to determine what record is pulled up on this whole page when we reload the page. Of course, we have to reload the page because it's based on page load. Alright. And we don't have the where command in there for some reason. Alright, so there's a mistake. Don't know why that got left out, but alright, it did. Awesomeness. Alright. Where name equals, in quotes. Kind of important. Not real sure how that got left out, but whatever. Alright. Bam, there it is. Now it says where name equals student, in quotes. So, my mistake earlier. Alrighty, so there we are. And 6 student at localhost, there we go. And that pulled up just that one record. Of course, I could display less values of this if I wanted to, but not displaying the first field of the record by not putting 0 here and echoing it out. You know, if I commented that out, I wouldn't display that, and so therefore you wouldn't have that record number. Alright. One last thing I want to show, as I'm not trying to show every single thing you can do with MySQL in here, but basically with me showing you how this works, I've showed you basically how to do everything in MySQL with PHP. I just haven't explicitly gone through and done it for every single thing there is. But realize the same type of process would work for drop tables and creating tables and databases. Alright, so execute shell commands here. If you want to run a third-party process on the actual computer, on the actual server, this is how you do it. say maybe the location of a file, like folder address, and you can say exec execute open parentheses single quotes ls. Here, for doing an ls command, I'm going to redirect this into the file here, and this will literally generate this file with whatever ls command. You could use this to run another program to do some subtask in the background, grab the values from that, parse it out, manipulate it with PHP, and literally get that information. Maybe serve it up as images or videos or whatever you're doing. And you can run external processes in here. You could start a webcam. You could start on server side and then stream it. You could, I mean, there's so many things you could do with this. It's literally endless what you could do with this. So this exe command is how you do remote execution of server side programs, how to run server side programs from PHP. And so this is extremely powerful, and it's really cool. So basically that covers a good basic, good understanding, good solid foundation here for how to use PHP to access MySQL and run different MySQL tasks and processes from inside of PHP. And this is how you can go about it. And it works really well and gives you some good results. And as you can see, it gets the job done. Alright, in the next videos we'll start getting more and more advanced with stuff, going deeper into stuff like MySQL, going deeper into doing things with classes, object-oriented programming, try catching errors, things of this nature, and start pushing the envelope more with this, and then also get into sessions and see if we can't add some real structure with PHP to our coding to help alleviate errors and headaches and make code more reusable and things of that nature. But with that, my name is Nate Nestler, and this is for Hyperactive Studios. Thank you very much.